Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad to welcome you as part of our community tonight. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and distributed live stream. By entering this virtual meeting room, you give your consent to be recorded and distributed by Vienna Live with Simeon Moore and other third parties. If you prefer to not be recorded, please go to the LinkedIn Live video feed, the link to which I provided in the chat room. Tonight, our featured guest is pianist Christina Petrowska Quilico. Mozart Complete Sonatas and Variations for Piano and Violin, a new series of albums which Christina recorded together with the late violinist Jacques Israelievitch, will be the subject of tonight's conversation. Welcome, Christina.
Hello, nice to be here.
Christina, so tell us about where you come from, how your musical tastes were formed, and why you decided to become a professional musician.
Okay, I was born in Ottawa, Canada, and studied in Toronto at the Conservatory of Music. I started about 4 years old. I was taking ballet at the same time. I mean, my mother always had classical music on, Tchaikovsky because of ballet, and took me to concerts. My favorite instrument was cello, not piano, and I listened to the Metropolitan Opera frequently. Around 10, I started listening to contemporary music. I thought it made me really smart and adventuresome. I listened to Canadian pianist Glenn Gould play Schoenberg. I listened to Pierre Boulez and Stockhausen, all this contemporary stuff that was on the radio from the CBC. I never really thought about being a professional musician. It was just something I did all the time. I liked school and academic subjects. But my teachers, after I did my first piano concerto, the Haydn, at the age of 10, and by the age of 12, I played the pictures of an exhibition, which was crazy, but I did that. And Shostakovich Piano Concerto, they thought I should go to Juilliard. So I auditioned, got a scholarship, and continued having concerts everywhere. And I still didn't think I was a professional musician. I always thought, oh, it was just something I did, and eventually I'll be this or that. So I think it kept me grounded. I didn't get too involved in ego and things like that. So I was fortunate in the way I thought about it. And here I am, 60 CDs later, and I've performed like 53 piano concertos. I still can't get over it, and I have projects lined up. So I guess I am a professional musician, and that's how it came about, just being adventuresome, not taking yourself too seriously, being all about the music. and tastes change, and I always have a variety of music playing, and I've always been interested. I'm doing a jazz concert actually in August, so it keeps you energetic and spirited, and it keeps a love of music. I never get bored. If I get bored, I find some other repertoire to play. So
Okay.
that's there.
Okay, let's listen to our next selection. Lovely. Tell us, Christina, now, what did you learn about Mozart's music for piano and violin while you were recording this I think it's six CD collection?
Yes, well, I've played Mozart before, obviously. I made my debut in New York with the Mozart Concerto when I was about 14 with Marie Pariah doing Beethoven, which was really special. And I loved Mozart. I found that it just was great for my heart. And then you get a little bit older and you start playing Rachmaninoff and big Beethoven pieces. And I kind of left Mozart. And it was Jacques Israelievitch many years later that asked me to do the Mozart complete. And we had done a French program, we had done a Canadian CD with good reviews. And so we sat down to sight read, and it just came so naturally that we decided to make this a big marathon concert. I mean, there's so many sonatas, I don't even know which one to pick. But Mozart had such a variety of textures and emotions in his sonatas. He was writing operas at the same time that he was writing some of these sonatas for piano and violin. And I will say that they're called sonatas for piano and violin in the scores because when Mozart started to write them, he was 6 years old, if you can believe it. We end with that particular sonata. And it was incredible. But the violin part is not as complex as the piano part. So Mozart did play violin, but his piano playing was better. But the last sonata that he wrote, I mean, that's usually played 526. was written at the same time, 1778, as Don Giovanni. And a lot of these sonatas were written around the same time of his symphonies and that. So all those colors and textures and the chromaticism is featured in these sonatas. Now, I think those first two excerpts were more of the melodic and emotional depth that he had, very operatic. But the many of the sonatas, the technical figurations for piano are really difficult, and for violin as well. And he had such a great sense of humor. You can hear it in a lot of the sonatas. So, I mean, he's really one of my favorite composers. And by playing all of them, and we did a marathon concert. It lasted about seven hours. We had very few breaks. We thought we were going to die, but we didn't. We felt so energized, and it was like experiencing Mozart from his 6 years old to shortly before he died. And it was a very emotional journey, I think, for both of us to experience the growth of Mozart and what he did with keys and the touch and the stories, the emotional stories in these sonatas. So yeah, I learned a lot. I felt like I experienced it. After that, I got invited to record seven concertos. So that was amazing too. So you always have to keep learning. I'm still a student at heart. I love to learn. So, and every day is different. Learn something new. And the same with Mozart when you're playing these sonatas. You find something new in them every time.
Let's have a listen. This is KV 526 Sonata, Allegro Molto. Wow. Okay. So tell us now, and we've got some applause there. Tell us, who was this violinist, Jacques Israelievitch? Why do you admire him so much as a musician? And what do you look for in a musician?
Okay. I just want to say there was one break there. That's the internet, right? Um, in the music, it wasn't us. Well, Jacques Israelievitch was also a prodigy. He graduated from a conservatoire in France at the age of 11. Uh, Sir George Schulte of Cleveland Orchestra hired him as assistant concert master at the very young age of 23. He's had a huge career. He was concert master of the Toronto Symphony for 20 years. We had played together, oddly enough, when I did a piano concerto, and there was a slow movement, and I thought he played so beautifully. But it was a few years later that we got together when he joined York University and were colleagues, that we started to play together. What I admire in him was always his sense of integrity, and that's in life and also in music. With this Mozart collection, we discussed ornaments, and everybody likes to discuss ornaments in classical music. And I had just given a course on ornaments in Baroque and classical era, was all up on it. And I said, well, this is the way the ornament should go. Are we going to do it this way? And he said, heck no. He said, let's just listen and do what we like, what feels good. And he was very honest about it. And we wrote our own little cadenzas for various bars where we were supposed to do cadenzas. We didn't do what was written, we created our own. And it just gave us a sense of freedom. And we seemed to be on the same musical wavelength. And he was very supportive in the early sonatas. He didn't let ego interfere with the fact that he had an accompaniment line. And as I said, many violinists will not do those early sonatas, and yet they were so important. And it was important for him, and he really put the music first. And he was a lot of fun to play with. He had a great sense of humor. He was intimidating. I think all concertmasters seem to be intimidating. They're next to a conductor. He was also a conductor, and I played with him as a soloist while he conducted. But it was always about the music for him. And I admire that in a musician. I think you have to be honest about yourself. Um, and not let that ego interfere. It's all about the music. I have a funny story, and I felt that Jacques emulated what it should be. I had been very successful in concerts with the New York Times. And after a tour, I came in, and my teacher said, you need a lesson, because I was going to perform a recital at Lincoln Center, Alice Tully Hall. And I said, oh, I don't need a lesson. I know this stuff. And she said, oh, you're so full of yourself all of a sudden. Well, you better get over yourself. She said, the New York Times, that's been very good to you, might say you didn't live up to potential with this next recital. Of course, that scared the living daylights out of me to see that and hear that, get a bad review. And then she said, your job as a musician is to be honest with your performance. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake here and there, but you've got to give the audience something. You've got to respect them. And my God, if they actually pay for a ticket, you better give them a good show. And so I've always kept that in mind. And Jacques was of the same mind. He always performed. And the very last concerts that we did together, that was the primary thing in his mind, is to perform Mozart brilliantly, and leave anything in life, leave any pain at the doorstep, and it's you just get into the music. And I think that's something that I admire, and all the great artists have that. It's all about the music.
And Christina, if I may say, I've interviewed several pop musicians, and one of the recent ones told me, well, you can't be a performing artist without an ego. So what does that mean? How do you remove this ego?
Well, I think with classical musicians, um, you replace it with confidence instead of thinking, um, oh, I'm great, I've gotten all these good reviews and people love me, I'm great. Just be confident. And I think that helps. So yeah, we do need an ego, of course, otherwise but it's not to have that supersede the musician. And I think I'm really about that because I do a lot of contemporary music. And I always think, well, it's about the composer because if I make a mess with Chopin, they're just going to say, she didn't play very well. They're not going to say Chopin was bad, bad composer. But with contemporary music, if I mess it up, they'll say, oh, it's the new composer. He's not very good. And so I always think, I have to put the composer first in this case. I mean, obviously, I need to play with confidence and enjoy the performing, but I think that's what I'm talking about. And of course, Jacques had an ego, um, and that you need one, but it's a little bit different, I think, than pop music. And then they get so many they make so much money, so much more than classical musicians, and they're written about, I think, much more. So yeah, a bit of a different genre, but we're all entertaining. We're all entertaining.
Okay. Let's have a listen to our next selection. This is KV 377, Tema e Variazioni. This brings us to our philosophical part of the conversation, and the title is What Key, as in musical key, what key is bittersweet? Christina, in the liner notes to Mozart Complete Sonatas and Variations for Piano and Violin, you sign off on the album writing, quote, "This was one of Jacques' last performances. He had wanted to perform as much as possible in the last months. In spite of the extreme pain and fatigue, he insisted on finishing our marathon of recordings, and our mood was bittersweet when we finished. Christina Petrowska Quilico," end quote. Most of the music we just listened to was written in major keys and sounds cheerful, not bittersweet. Did Jacques have a completely different idea about major and minor tonalities? Since we now know that this was the last music he would ever play, it's hard for the listener to reconcile the music's tonality and character with the story behind it. What do tonalities mean to you and Jacques, and how are we supposed to listen to this album?
Well, I think with bittersweet, what I meant was that the very last concerts that we gave just a month and a half before his death, uh, bitter was the sadness that we wouldn't be able to perform together again. And for people, we enjoyed performing these for audiences. The sweet was that the music was so glorious and it was so nice to play Mozart. So that's the explanation there. With the major and minor keys, um, I actually looked up last night, went through the whole series of sonatas to find that there were quite a number of minor keys, but they're not in the first movements. They're usually the second movement or they're half a movement. So let me see, I did write it down here just so that I remember. Yeah, KV 304 is an E minor. And then the variations, Hélas, j'ai perdu mon amant, are in G minor. He liked G minor, so I can go through like 380, the Andante is G minor, 377, the second movement Andante is in D minor, 379 is in G minor, the variation 5 is in D minor, and I could go on there, but 10. So there is a mix. And within the sonatas, they got quite complex near the last number. So you do get a more kind of a romantic uh, kind of a view of what will come with Beethoven, for example, and a more complex harmonic structures. So in some of the sonatas, it makes it difficult to play the rhythm and the keys change abruptly, and makes it just exciting, I think. And so they weren't all happy. I mean, the one that you just heard was quite on the sadder side. So, however, when you're listening to this, I mean, life is up and down. There happiness to sadness, and I think listening to these sonatas, there is a mix. Predominantly, yes, I think they're joyful. I mean, we always felt great joy when we played them. The slow movements, Gramophone magazine gave us a wonderful review a number of years ago when that second volume was uh, released before this set of six. And, they complimented the operatic nature of the performance of the slow movement. So I was very thrilled with that because that's just, he was writing operas at the same time, so it carried through. And symphonies. I think listening to these sonatas, his favorite key was G minor and C minor. And they're bittersweet, I think, the keys for me. So, but I think it's joy. He loved to write. He had a great sense of humor. Mozart, there's lots written about him. I don't have to repeat, but his sense of humor was extraordinary. I mean, there are articles written on whether he had Tourette's because with the aristocracy, he would, I can't remember the exact title, but if he didn't like one of the duchesses, he would say, well, Duchess Smack Bottom or something. Yeah, he got quite racy. And you hear that in the music. I don't think, I mean, there's not enough time to go through 7 hours or whatever of music, but there are some that are funny and little twists in the fast movements, which make them difficult to play, but they're really, almost comic relief. We think of the magic flute, Don Giovanni, and all, there's always some funny character in there. So yeah, we had fun. And the very last concert, what happened, the bitterness was that as soon as we got off the stage, he cried, but he only cried for a little bit because he didn't want to greet people with a sad face. And And then his wonderful wife, Gabrielle, is a good friend of mine. Um, she said, "Oh, look after him." She wanted to go to one of the pottery stores. Jacques loved pottery, and he had a scooter. This is a month and a half before he died. He was wearing his French beret. He was very proud of being a Frenchman, and he just winked at me and took off like a bat out of hell. And there I have one of the last moments that I remember running after him on the streets of Upper State New York. And he's just laughing and carrying on. And so that transferred into joy. And I think that's what made performing with him so much fun. And hopefully for the audience to hear that. Yeah, that wonderful quality of humor and just living life to the fullest.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that wonderful story with us. So, are there any questions or comments? Would anyone like to ask Christine anything? Hi, Dr. Davis.
Steve,
Hello.
it's I just took off the mute. Well, thank you very much, Christina. That was
Oh,
really nice thoughts, nice sayings, wonderful piano playing. Ottawa really touches me because when our kids were young, we used to take them up there to the piano festivals, and and Sim knows the children, and I don't think he ever came with us, but I loved walking along I think it's called the Rideau Canal, if I recall correctly, and there's a pathway there, and wow, the first time I've heard you, but very impressed. Thank you, thank you.
oh, thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Davis.
You're welcome, Sim.
So,
It's Dave, it's
let's,
David Yeager here. If
oh,
I
hi,
could just,
David. Hi.
sorry, I don't have a camera on this laptop, but I just wanted to say that as the producer of these recordings, it was such an immense pleasure to work with Christina and Jacques. And you know, it was a lot of hours spent, and but I have to say there was never a single dull moment. It was pure pleasure from beginning to end. And you know, that's a tribute to the music and also to the artists. And I dare say we were quite a good team. We communicated very effectively, both in the studio and in the editing process. Christina is a fabulous editor. To get her critiques of the first cut, and then go on to the next cut, and just to get everything, as it should be, perfect. Um, she caught the tiniest things, and of course we dealt with them all. I have to tell you a story. I had some guests from North Carolina over for dinner one evening, and I put on volume one of the Mozart. I know it's not really meant to be mean Mozart as dinner music or anything like that, but just to have some really beautiful music on in the house. And we had barely sat down, and the gentleman who was the guest, he said, "Who is playing the piano?" He just heard, like, we were in the kitchen, and the music was playing in the front room, and he just said, "That is extraordinary piano playing." And it is quite remarkable in recording and in performance, when you work with artists of a certain caliber, that the quality of excellence comes through. It's unmistakable, and it just sort of draws your attention, and it kind of declares itself that this is great art. And that's what it was, the whole experience. And I'll just say it's one of my most proud moments in my career as a producer, to have worked with these great artists on this great music.
Thank
Oh,
you.
well, thanks, David. Yeah, we've done a lot of CDs together. We've got a bunch more to do. Um, One thing I wanted to say about these concerts, and thank God David was recording. We basically did the concert, and and David, you recorded part of the rehearsal, and that was it. Jacques wasn't able to do much more, so I thought that that was quite remarkable. And the edits were you were right, they were small. I'm obsessed with ghost notes. Sometimes with pianists, we think we've hit the note, but you don't really hear it clearly. That and a dirty note here and there. With violinists, it's always tuning. But yeah, we all had fun, and David's an extraordinary producer, so made it a lot easier for sure to get this done and edited. So thank you very much, David. I'll see you soon.
Thank
It was a pure pleasure. And you're right. Yes, there's more to do.
thank you very much, David, for that story. So let's listen to our final track of the evening. This is KV 526, the third movement, Presto. Final thoughts. What do you wish all of us, Christina, who listen to this album, what would you like us to take away from listening to this album?
Oh, the beautiful music of Mozart and what joy it brings to performers. And uh, yeah, I would love to do the whole set again. I wish Jacques were alive. The beauty of music is that it's never the same, and you can always tweak and play it differently according to mood. And this is a gift that composers give us. And it's that freedom to interpret. And I'm sure Mozart would have been very happy. He was an improviser himself. There's a story that he had written, I think it was the first movement, I forget which sonata. And of course, he didn't have time to write it. And he had to give the concert to make some money. And he just improvised, and everybody was happy. So, yeah, I love Mozart's personality. It comes through in his music. So everybody enjoy. Just hope it puts you in a good mood.
Thank you. So Let's see how we can stay in touch with Christina and get the album. So it's easy enough. It's ChristinaPetrovskaQuilico.com. And if we'd like to listen to the album, just click on Listen and Watch. And it should come up right there. Mozart Sonatas. There they are. So you can hear them right there. Listen to everything that we have right there. You can also, I think, buy it here under recordings.
You have to go to Navona Parma Records because I don't deal with sales. It's the record company. So just check Navona Records and under Mozart Complete Sonatas for
Okay.
Violin. Yeah, that's where you can buy it. You can also listen free on Spotify, which is great. Apple. Adagio. I mean, there are a lot of streaming sites that you can get the complete set of 6 CDs.
And
So
Christina, if people want to reach out to you, if they have any questions, can they contact you through this website?
yes, yeah, you just contact me. There it is. You can write me, and I usually respond.
Perfect. So just go to send me a message under contact,
Yeah.
and Christina will be happy to hear your thoughts and questions. Thank you so very much to Christina Petrowska Quilico.
Oh, thank you. Enjoyed being on your program.
So let's see
I
what's coming up next week on Vienna Live. And while you're at it, so all you have to do is go to www.simeonmore.com and you can find out about all upcoming shows. Click on email and put in your email and click yes, I want email updates from Vienna Live while you're at it. And you can get the Friday update from me, Friday greeting. And coming up in 2 Wednesdays, so next Wednesday we don't have a show. We'll have a show coming up on June 18th, Wednesday, June 18th, and it is Johann Damai, Complete Works for Cello and Wind Orchestra. Widely known to audiences for his Symphony No. 1, The Lord of the Rings, composer Johann Damai releases Casanova, the complete recordings of his compositions and transcriptions for cello and wind orchestra, now available on Navona Records. Let's discover this contemporary classical music master. So again, that's in 2 Wednesdays, Wednesday, June 18th, Johann Damai, Complete Works for Cello and Wind Orchestra. All information is available again at www.simeonmore.com. Again, thank you to Christina Petrowska Quilico. Thank you to Vienna Live sponsors, Victoria and Frederick Mulligan. Thank you to Abby Moser, Agnieszka Benoit-Rivalet, and Mary Schlesinger for their support of this show. Thanks to my cousin Mike, a marketer from Layer App. If you're an architect or an engineer, they have a really cool tool you should check out. And of course, most of all, thanks to you, our participants who make it all worthwhile. From Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and Saratoga Springs, New York, goodbye, and see you next Wednesday.